Have you ever imagined trying to survive for 5 days in the world's deepest waters, surrounded by sharks? What if you had to struggle at just 19 years old, 1,000 kilometers away from holding your mother's hands, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? This is the true story of Tommy Rodriguez. In July 1945, during one of the United States Navy's greatest maritime disasters, a young radio operator's incredible struggle for survival aboard the USS Indianapolis. Now let's go back to 1945 and listen to this extraordinary story directly from Tommy. If you'd like to share your own war stories and family memories with us, you can send them to our email address in the description.
I'm Tommy Rodriguez. I'm 19 years old and I come from San Antonio, Texas. My mother's name is Maria and my father's name is Carlos. I grew up in a small farmhouse surrounded by vast cornfields. We'd wake up in the mornings to the roosters crow and end the day watching the sunset. But now, in July 1945, thousands of kilometers from my home, I serve as a radio operator aboard the United States Navy's USS Indianapolis. Our ship has a long and proud history. A heavy cruiser class, 186 meters long and weighing approximately 12,000 tons, a sea monster. 917 brave soldiers serve on her decks. I'm one of them. In my radio room, with those big metal headphones on, I listen to Morse codes. Every sound, every signal feels like a message from our homeland. Varsalin me, our ship's captain, is Charles Butler McVeigh, an experienced and respected officer. A man with straight shoulders, determined gaze, and gray hair that shines like silver in the sun. 45 years old, but his experience at sea is much older. He always told us, "Boys, this ship is your home, and I'm the head of your home." His words reminded me of my mother's warm, smelling tortillas tin. My closest friend working beside me is Jack Morrison, 23 years old, a tall, dark-haired boy from Chicago. His smile is so genuine that sometimes it reminded me of the times I played with neighbor children back home. Jack's blue eyes were as clear as the Texas sky, and in those eyes, I could always see the hope of returning home to his fiancée Betty. We also had Dr. Lewis Haynes aboard our ship, about 35 years old, medium height, with brown eyes. Every time he cleaned his hands, I remembered my mother's insistence on washing my hands before meals. Dr. Haynes always had a smiling face, showing compassion to wounded soldiers as if he were caring for his own children. In those hot days of July 1945, the war was nearly over. But our mission wasn't finished yet. We were carrying a secret cargo. I would later learn these were parts of the atomic bomb. But we had no idea at the time. We only knew we were performing a very important mission and needed to be careful. On the night of July 30th, we were advancing through the deep waters of the Pacific Ocean. I was on night duty, headphones on my ears, listening to signals. Outside, the wind was blowing gently, waves hitting the ship's sides, creating a soft rhythm. This rhythm reminded me of the lullaby melodies my mother sang to put me to sleep. It was 12 minutes past midnight. At that exact moment, I felt a terrible shock in the ship's hull. It was as if a giant fist had punched our ship's belly. My headphones fell off my head, radio equipment started shaking wildly. At first, I couldn't understand what happened. Had we collided with another ship? Or had we hit a mine? But then came the second explosion. This time, it was much more violent. All the ship's lights went out, everything was plunged into pitch darkness. A terrible creaking sound came from the ship's side, as if the bones of a giant monster were breaking. That's when I understood we had been torpedoed. Japanese submarine I-58 had emerged from the darkness of night and fired 2 torpedoes at us. The first torpedo hit the bow section. The second hit the middle section. Our ship, the pride of the United States Navy, USS Indianapolis, had received a fatal blow. In the darkness, I could hear the screams of panicked soldiers. Abandoned ship. Abandoned ship. Voices came from everywhere. But the ship's electrical system had collapsed. Emergency sirens weren't sounding. Most of us were trying to understand what was happening in the darkness with only the weak light of flashlights. When I left my radio room, I saw how quickly the ship was sinking. Water was flooding into the ship like a flood. Corridors were filled with water. The sounds of bending metal scratched my ears. My mother always said, "Tommy, no matter what happens, stay calm." Right then I remembered my mother's words and took a deep breath. I ran to get my life jacket. My hands were trembling, but I tried to stay calm as my mother had taught me. While putting on the life jacket, I looked at my mother's photograph I took out of my pocket. That beautiful smile, those brown eyes. It was as if she was saying to me, "Be strong, son. You'll come home." When I got to the deck, I noticed how quickly the ship was tilting. The starboard side was already submerged in water. Some soldiers were trying to get into lifeboats, others were jumping directly into the water. Captain McVeigh was on the bridge, trying not to abandon his ship until the last moment. I searched for Jack with my eyes. I found him on deck, trying to lower one of the lifeboats into the water with other soldiers. "Tommy," he shouted when he saw me. "Come here, we'll jump together." I ran toward him, but the ship's tilt was so severe that it was hard even to stand. The metal deck was slippery and dangerous. When I reached Jack, I could see the fear in his eyes. But there was also determination. "Are you ready?" he asked. "We're going to jump into the water." "I'm ready," I said, but actually I wasn't ready at all. Of course, I knew how to swim. I had learned in the river near our farm in Texas. But this was completely different. This was the Pacific Ocean in the darkness of night, who knows how deep. When we jumped into the water, the first thing I felt was cold. Despite it being July, the ocean water was ice cold. My breath was cut off, my heartbeat accelerated. But worse, I was trying to swim as hard as I could to avoid getting caught in the current the ship was creating. Our ship, USS Indianapolis, sank in just 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Shorter than the time it takes my mother to prepare breakfast. That magnificent ship was buried in the depths of the ocean, leaving us, 917 people, in the middle of the Pacific. The first night was the hardest. Most of the soldiers who jumped into the water had scattered, but gradually we began to gather in small groups. Chick and I became part of a group of about 30 people. Dr. Haynes was among us, trying to help our wounded comrades. When morning came, I realized how bad our situation was. Around us was only endless blue water. No land was visible on the horizon. As the sun rose, we saw debris floating on the water and bodies. The bodies of our comrades. "Tommy," said Jack, his voice hoarse and tired. "Have you ever swum for this long?" "No," I said. "Have you?" "Me neither. But we'll do it. We have to." The second day was even harder. The sun stood above us like a burning fire. Our lips were cracked, our throats were bone dry. You couldn't drink salt water because then you'd get even thirstier. Dr. Haynes constantly reminded us of this. Don't drink ocean water. Boys, you'll get thirstier. On the third day, I saw the first shark. Its long gray shadow was swimming under the water, circling around us. My heartbeat seemed to stop. My mother had never told me shark stories. There were no sharks on Texas farms. "Stay calm," said Dr. Haynes. "Don't make sudden movements. They come to the smell of blood, but I don't know how many of us were wounded. Those who were injured during the ship's sinking, those who were cut while drifting on the water. The sharks were picking up this smell of blood. On the fourth day, I started seeing hallucinations. I was going crazy from thirst. When I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's kitchen. Hot tortillas, fresh salsa, cold lemonade, my mouth would water. Then I'd return to reality. Only salt water, burning sun, and sharks. Jack was getting worse and worse. His lips had turned purple. His eyes were glazed. Tommy, he said to me at one point, his voice like a whisper, "If I die, tell Betty." "No," I said decisively. "You won't die. We'll both go home. You'll marry Betty, and I'll work on my mother and father's farm," but I could see death in Jack's eyes. Dr. Haynes was trying to help him as much as we could, but he had no equipment. He only had his experience and will. On the 5th day, the miracle happened. In the sky, very far away, a small dot appeared. At first, I thought it was a mirage, but the dot was growing, approaching. An airplane. A United States Navy reconnaissance plane. "We're here!" I shouted as loud as my voice could carry. "We're here!" Everyone left in our group was shouting. We were waving our hands, thrashing in the water. The plane saw us. It started circling around us. A few hours later, rescue ships came. USS Doyle and USS Bassett. It was the most beautiful sight I had ever seen. The American flag was waving. I could hear the voices of soldiers. When they pulled me out of the water, my legs wouldn't hold me. I had been swimming for 5 days. For 5 days, I had survived in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Jack was also rescued, and Dr. Haynes too. But out of 917 people, only 317 could be saved. In the hospital ship, lying on clean sheets, I took my mother's photograph in my hand. My eyes filled with tears. "I stayed strong, Mother," I whispered. "I stayed strong as you taught me." When I returned to the United States, my mother and father were waiting for me in San Antonio. When they stood at the pier, I could see the tears in my mother's eyes from far away. She ran to me, opened her arms. When I felt my mother's embrace, all the pain of those 5 days was left behind. "Mijo," she said to me, her eyes teary. "I missed you. I cried for you every night. I missed you too, Mother. I thought of you every day. When I wanted to drink water, I imagined your lemonade. When I wanted to eat, I imagined your tortillas." My father was also standing beside us, his eyes proud but also worried. "Son," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder, "you've become a real man now. But remember, this is your home. You're always safe." But I knew that real strength was in what my mother had taught me. Staying calm, holding on with hope, never giving up. These values were what kept me standing during those dark nights. Every night, I saw those cold waters in my dreams, but I woke up to my mother's voice. Jack also returned to Chicago and married Betty. Dr. Haynes continued practicing medicine, but none of us could forget that night. The USS Indianapolis tragedy was the largest single ship loss in United States Navy history. It had cost the lives of 600 of our comrades. I now work with my father on the farm in San Antonio. Every morning, when I look at the cornfields, I remember that endless blue water. But I'm not afraid anymore. Because I know that even in the most difficult moments, we can overcome everything with the power of our hope and loved ones. At nights when I sit with my mother in the kitchen, I tell her about those 5 days. "Tommy," she says to me, "you are very strong. But remember, being strong doesn't mean being alone. You are never alone, and every night before going to bed, I pray for the 600 soldiers we lost in those 5 days. They too were someone's son, husband, father. They too wanted to go home. But keeping their memory alive became our duty."
Tommy Rodriguez's incredible survival story is not just a tale of a young soldier's courage, but also proof of the power of the human spirit. We respectfully remember the 600 soldiers who lost their lives in the USS Indianapolis tragedy and will never forget the experience lived by the 317 heroes who were rescued. This story shows us that even in our darkest moments, the light of hope should never be extinguished. Tommy's reunion with his family became a symbol of the emotional journey every American family experienced during the war years. If you have similar family stories, don't forget to share them with us. You can reach us through our email address in the description.